Hello everyone, welcome to our channel Students Homeopathy and let's learn together. Kant's philosophy is one of the important manuscripts of homeopathy. Understanding Kant's philosophy increases one's depth and acumen in homeopathy. In this video, we will discuss a very important chapter from Kant's philosophy, that is lecture 11, and the title of the chapter is Sickness and Cure in Dynamic Plane. Kant has started this chapter referring to aphorism number 16 of Organon of Medicine, that is, our vital force as a spirit-like dynamis cannot be attacked and affected by injurious influences on the healthy organism caused by the external inimical forces that disturb the harmonious play of life. Otherwise, than a spirit-like dynamic way, and in like manner, all such morbid derangements, that is diseases, cannot be removed from it by the physician in any other way than by the spirit-like, dynamic, virtual, alternative powers of the serviceable medicines acting upon our spirit-like vital force, which perceives them through the medium of the sentient faculty of the nerves everywhere present in the organism, so that it is only by the dynamic action on the vital force that remedies are able to re-establish and do actually re-establish health and vital harmony after the changes in the health of the patient cognizable by our senses, that is the totality of the symptoms, have revealed the disease to the carefully observing and investigating physician as fully as was requisite in order to enable him to cure it. This aphorism mentions three states. First, the state of health. Second, the state of disease, that is how a healthy state turns into disease state. And thirdly, the state of cure, that is how the disordered or disease state can be turned into health. So let's first discuss how a healthy state turns into disease state. The cruder things like injuries, suck, etc. cannot produce a disease state. However, for a temporary period, the body may react to them and a few symptoms appear which subside by themselves without establishing any miasm upon the organism. Thus, no acute or chronic miasm is produced in consequence. Let's take for example, one met with a mechanical injury, example like an abrasion. Now, he will feel pain and there may also be localized heat and redness, but these symptoms will subside and the wound will be healed by itself without any need of medicine. Also, it will not establish any miasm upon the organism. Let's take another example. If a man develops dehydration and suck after using purgatives or emetics, he may feel weak, thirsty and develop hypotension afterwards. But they will subside by themselves after appropriate rehydration therapy. It will not establish any miasm upon the organism. Next, only the simple substance can produce a disease state. Only the immaterial dynamic substance which acts on the plane similar to the plane of patient susceptibility can produce disease or sickness. Thus, the disease starts in the innermost of the man and travels to the outermost, and there it manifests itself as signs and symptoms which are the evidence of establishment of disease. That's why when the outermost only is affected, example in external injury, the vital force is disturbed only for a temporary period. It cannot establish a definite disease. The temporary disturbance of vital force thus produced does not have the nature of a true miasmatic disease, like a beginning, a period of progress or a period of decline. Causes that affect the external body in tissue level depress the bodily functions only for a temporary period of time, but do not produce a true disease. However, most violent and long-continued use of these cruder drugs can implant a drug disease upon man's economy. Still, after all, the drug disease thus produced is much more superficial in comparison to a true miasmatic disease. Here, Kant has given the example of smallpox to illustrate it. The smallpox crusts can be swallowed and digested with very little trouble, but the inhalation of atmosphere containing the aura of smallpox upon a plane matching to the plane of susceptibility of the patient produces the true smallpox disease, having a period of prodrome, period of progress, and a period of decline. The disease cause or the disease is always immaterial and invisible. We cannot see the disease or detect it by means of laboratory instruments. However, we can feel or detect it only through its results or ultimates. Everything that we observe, feel, or find through laboratory investigation in a disease are the disease ultimates only, but never the disease itself. The ultimates can be affected and even destroyed by the ultimates. Ultimates means the last in a process or a series. For depth knowledge, you can watch our video on Kant's philosophy, lecture number 8, that is simple substance. The divine God is the prime and all the worldly things that we can see or feel are the ultimates. Now, according to Kant, the ultimates can affect ultimates. They can undergo friction, collision, or destruction between themselves. Similarly, our physical body, that is the tissues which are the ultimates, can be affected by the ultimates. But the ultimates cannot produce a dynamic disease in man because the ultimates cannot affect the prime, that is the simple substance. Then the next point is how a disease state can be returned into healthy state. The disordered vital force, that is, disease can never be restored into order by the ultimates, that is the crude drugs, because they will not correspond to the dynamic plane of the susceptibility of the patient. Only those medicines which are similar to the vital force in quality, plane or power, that is the homeopathic dynamic potencies which are the simple substances, can bring out cure. For this, we have to raise them to the plane of similarity in quality, that is, we have to potentize them to increase their degree to match the plane or degree of susceptibility of the patient, and then only they can produce cure. For example, if a patient needs sulfur, we have to prescribe him sulfur in highest degrees to get cure. Merely rubbing the crude sulfur upon his skin, taking sulfur baths or wearing it in stockings will not help him. The disease curing agent, that is medicine, and the disease producing agent must be similar in nature and quality so that cure can take place. Now, how to know that the causes are similar? The causes must be similar if the effects are similar in quality in nature. Thus, to get a similar remedy, we have to match the symptoms of the patient, that is, which are the effects of natural disease cause, with the symptoms of drugs, that is, which are the effects of drug or the artificial disease cause. However, sometimes the lower potencies as well as the crude drugs remove the manifestation of disease, but only those located in the outer planes. In chronic disease, this removal of symptoms is only temporary relief or suppression because the medicine in lower attenuation or crude state does not reach the innermost degrees. They only act upon the exterior plane. But in acute diseases, these cruder forms of medicine can fulfill their purpose because they are able to remove the outermost symptoms acting upon the superficial plane. And the innermost goes away by itself because the acute miasm tends to recover. Only till the disease complete its course and subside by itself, the patient should continue to survive. Because if before the disease complete its fixed course, the patient dies, then nothing can be done for him. Next, Kant has discussed an interesting incident of his life during the beginning of his high potency practice. According to him, earlier he was not convinced that the high potency really worked, so he started with lower attenuations. But by this, he only got superficial results. And during this time, one day, a mother hastily entered into his chamber carrying her child who was suffering from diarrhea and seemed to be at death's door. His stool was horribly offensive, stinking and profuse. Now, basing on these symptoms, Kant prescribed him 1 dose of Podophyllum 30, which was his own handmade. The next day, he was anticipating that the child might have died. But to his astonishment, the child's grandmother welcomed him, saying that the child was all right after his medicine. After that incident, Kent tried many other medicines in 30th potency in his practice and got success. Then he started experimenting with higher and higher potencies and concluded that the more higher the potencies, the more interior it acts upon in man. Kent found that if a moderately high potency improves the patient only for some period of time and then stops working, then we should prescribe a higher potency of the same to take up its work. In this way, a series of potencies should be administered one after another, each succeeding potency thus continuing the work of the preceding one. To explain this, Kent has given example of a case of physical patient for whom he had prescribed sulfur starting from moderately high potency to the highest potencies like 55 cm, dm and mm. While discussing this case, Kent mentioned how homeopathic aggravation was produced after each dose and he prescribed placebo for it. How each time after getting aggravation the patient was reproaching him and getting relief after placebo, praising. So, Kent writes, if you have learned from your experience that what will be the next effect of your medicine, inform it to your patient so that he will prepare himself mentally to face it. Otherwise, he will shift to another doctor because he has no idea of homeopathic aggravation. Again, he says one important thing, that when a patient has already been administered a series of potency and has reached the higher potency, the lower attenuation or the crude forms of the same drug will often not work on him. Unless and otherwise, he is overdosed to produce poisoning. Here, Kent has discussed about 3 planes in which man becomes sick. Outermost plane or the nutritive plane. Patient sick in this plane is sick in outermost. Second, middle plane. Patient sick in this plane is sick from this plane to the outermost. And third, interior plane or dynamic plane or the plane of dynamis. Patient sick in this plane is sick throughout, from innermost to outermost. Now, what is nutritive plane? Nutritive plane is the outermost plane, that is the plane of tissues and ultimates. Affection or sickness in this plane means assimilation in tissues has been disturbed. This is the plane in which the crude drugs operate. The crude drugs cannot disturb the internal economy of man. Instead, they create disturbance in ultimates, that is in nutritive plane. For example, if one takes emetic to induce vomiting, it will act only in nutritive plane. It cannot create disturbance from within, although, however, the whole economy of man suffers from it because of dehydration. The crude drug cannot produce a true disease having a period of prodrome, period of progress, and a period of decline or continuance. Only a dynamic cause, that is a potentized medicine which acts on the dynamic plane, can produce a true disease. Then, what is dynamic plane or plane of dynamics or interior plane? This is the innermost plane in which the dynamic remedies as well as the dynamic disease causing agents act. This is the plane of establishment of disease as well as the cure of disease. The chronic disease is formed when the disease causing agent acts on dynamic plane. So let's quickly summarize all this. Cruder things like injuries, shock, etc. cannot produce a true disease, that is, they cannot establish any miasm upon the organism. However, most violent and long continued use of the cruder drugs can implant a drug disease upon man's economy. Only the immaterial dynamic substance that acts on the plane similar to the plane of patient susceptibility can produce a true disease or sickness. Signs and symptoms are the evidence of establishment of disease. Drug diseases are much superficial in comparison to the true miasmatic diseases. Disease cause or the disease is always immaterial and invisible. Everything that we can observe, feel or find through laboratory investigation in a disease is the disease ultimates only. Crude drugs cannot produce cure. Only the homeopathic dynamic potencies that are similar to the vital force in quality, plane or power can bring out cure. However, in acute diseases, these cruder forms of medicine can fulfill their purpose because they are able to remove the outermost symptoms acting upon the superficial plane and the innermost goes away by itself. Causes must be similar if the effects are similar in quality in nature. Thus, to find a similar remedy, we have to match the symptoms of the patient, that is the effects of the natural disease cause, with the symptoms of drug, that is the effects of drug or the artificial disease cause. Medicine in lower attenuation or crude state does not reach the innermost degree. It only acts upon the exterior plane. When a patient has already been administered a higher potency going through a series of potencies, the lower potencies or the crude forms of the same drug will often not work on him. Only he can be overdosed to produce poisoning. There are 3 planes in which man becomes sick: outermost plane or the nutritive plane, middle plane, and third, interior plane or dynamic plane or the plane of dynamis. Nutritive plane is the outermost plane, that is the plane of tissues and ultimates. Dynamic plane or the plane of dynamics or the interior plane is the innermost plane in which the disease is established and also cure is produced. So that's all for this video. If you have not yet subscribed to our channel Students Homeopathy, please subscribe it now and also click on the bell icon and select all so that you will not miss any of our informative, educational and interesting videos on homeopathy. And please provide your valuable feedback in the comment section. Also, we will love to answer your queries on this topic. Thank you for watching.